So you know who I am. My name is Marek and I'm from Tactical Tech, and you know that there won't be any Q&A at the end of this talk. I'm just going to talk for 27 minutes and I'm going to leave the stage, but I'm going to be behind the door, so if you want to talk, we can talk. I'm just really bad at taking questions, so I thought I'm going to save you from that disaster, and myself as well. So just to make sure that you are in the right place at the right time, this is what we're going to be doing here. However, I won't be talking about elections per se, because they will go as they go, unpredictable. But I will definitely talk a lot about the influence industry, how it works, who are the actors, what is the infrastructure behind it, and I'm going to show a short video somewhere at the beginning. The other housekeeping information for you that is useful is that I like to be distracted. So if you want to explore something I'm talking about, just go ahead. Take your mobile, there will be QR codes and other things. And if you want to dive to anything I'm going to be showing you, just go ahead. Enjoy. So, here we go. What is issue profiling? You all heard about Cambridge Analytica, obviously. That is not like a news. There are some institutions, organizations, businesses that offer different kinds of services that would help political actors to gain a little bit more influence. And when we talk about a little bit more, the election these days are about 0.01 difference between who is voting for what or who actually decides not to vote. The subject here are people that are not sure, not convinced, don't really want to participate, don't have time, and so on. We're not talking about influence that would turn somebody from one side of the spectrum of believing in certain things into the other side of the spectrum, so from the left to the right, from the right to the left, and so on, etc. That is not happening. There you deploy very different tactics. So in 2015 and 16, we started collecting data and information that was about, are there any businesses that claim that they can help political actors to influence the voters? What kind of services, methods, and technologies they offer, and what we can learn from that. This is an example of our work where you can't access the data per se. There's no database of influence industry, or there wasn't. We made one. But how we made this is kind of more important, where you have to rely on very unstable data set, and that data set is basically what the companies tell themselves about what they do, where they work, and how they work, which in most cases is basically a PR. They basically want to sell services to whoever wants to buy them, so they would claim anything. They would use Bitcoin, AI, you name it, to say that they are on the top of an issue and they know what they're doing. So the database right now that you can see the snapshot of here has over 500 entities that we were able to look at. And how we look at them, we look at their websites, we look at their presentations, we send people to different places where businesses are talking about what they can offer to other businesses and political actors and so on, etc. So you can explore it and see who are they, where they work, and so on. But how the data looks like, it looks like this. And let's see if the sound's going to work or not. Maybe yes, maybe not. I think it does.
The perfect strategy. Our experts will put you in the position to be victorious, electing a president. How do you build a movement? Your revolution starts here. New Sapiens. Engaging influencers, opinion formers, and decision makers. Political advertising, political services, campaign analytics, connecting votes and candidates. India's #1 elections technology company, 96% winning record. Larry Hogan, Governor of Maryland, we're ready to ignite your cause. Political campaigns, moving at the speed of politics to build your digital army and target key voters. Dare greatly, a champion for great candidates. Elections. Create preference among voters. where political change begins. Start a campaign. Interesting happens where cultures clash. Every day's a campaign. Campaigns for ideas that matter. Peaceful change, driven by people empowered by technology. Changing the world, one pixel at a time. Digital organizing to impact change. Inspire change. Incite action. Behind every victory, there is a strategy. We get inside the mind of the voter. Identity solutions, gravy insights. Know your supporters like never before. Our data helps you know your customers like you know your friends. Really know your stakeholders. Find out what your customers and employees actually think. Learn how your consumers really feel. Access the most powerful predictive audiences to drive one-to-one conversations. Connect, shape, influence. The two prongs of persuasion. SCL. Pure data intelligence. It's not what you say, it's what they hear. Listen, ask, solve. Surveillance. Data fingerprinting. Accelerating data mapping and unification using fingerprints. Draw deeper insights. Where we go is who we are. Big data that reveals where people go and what they do. Data insights and polling. Data-driven polling. Change-making insights. Influence to conversion. Be a part of their journey. We understand Brazil. Predict voter behavior in real time. Live predictive modeling that helps you deliver smart media campaigns and convert voters. Discover your personality now. Over 40 million people have taken our scientifically developed tests. Engage with citizens. Manage crisis communications. Deliver services efficiently. Voter analysis and activation. Voter analysis, segmentation and targeting enabled by real-time data, algorithms and AI. What motivates you? Insights inspire action. Uncover truth. Unlock meaning. Unleash passion.
Okay, I assume you get the point. So the actual the actual film is based on a database of 300 that we had at the time, and we had a lot of fun it's artsy, so you can watch it for 15 minutes and going on and on and on. I'm not gonna play it. What you're looking at right now is another piece that we base on the learnings we have had from looking at and analyzing the way they operate. Now, you may ask the question later that won't be a chance for, that is, does it really work? And for us, well, it doesn't matter. What we're looking at are possibilities and opportunities and chances and the technology that is already working. If it is, working in the field, is a matter of time. It's not about if, it's about when. And we've seen that already in many places. We analyze also the work of the influence industry not only against the elections, because elections is a very peculiar time where a lot of actors act at the same time. They work with specific groups and they do specific things. So you can actually ask institutions like we did. We asked for data in the UK and the US and we got the data. So we knew which political party bought which services from which company. Of course, when you look at the contracts, you only learn about things like consulting. You have to match then the contract with the company and what they claim they may be able of doing based on the data that they also don't disclaim where they have it from. We were looking at the work outside of the elections because we thought that there's actually a very good method for influencing our people's opinions around larger issues that we care about in different ways. When there is a debate, when there's a problem, and so on. And this fictional dashboard gives you a sense of what kind of data is at play. And what is important here is to look at that things that you may not think of that constitute value to the influencer, that your opinion about abortion or your opinion about something else that is unrelated to specific crisis, etc., determines a very nuanced profile that you will be targeted at a very high speed. For the Futurium here in Berlin, we did an interactive object called Opinionator that you can go and see in the lab in the basement, that is using an avatar to get people engaged with only three methods that the influence industry is using. But if you're brave enough to go and see the back of the Opinionator, you would see this infographic that is showing 250-something methods and ways of using data that constitutes the influence industry way of profiling individuals and groups in different ways. If you're interested in more of this work, there's a report and lots of conclusions and a lot of investigations that the team have run with researchers in 30 countries. So we actually look at ongoing elections between 2016 and now in almost 40 countries, I would say, to this day. And we were observing which actors are appearing in these places, what they offer, who is working with them, and how much it costs. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is this influence industry doesn't exist without the infrastructure. So there won't be any Cambridge Analytica without Facebook. You need data, and you need data at quantity and quality. So you need nuanced data, very diverse data, and timely data, and so on. So I want to show you artistic struggle with trying to visualize something that is theoretically very simple, and that is how you can look at big tech, and big tech has been mentioned here many, many times. We're talking about GAFAM, through the lens of their acquisitions. You may be looking at this object thinking what they are about, and I will show you a little bit in a second. We have collected, up until a year and a half ago, 1,210 documents about acquisitions of big tech companies. So basically, which are the businesses they bought and what was claimed that they bought them for. And that's an interesting subject. You can explore it here, because when a big company, the business model is that you invest a lot of money in startups become very good because they have very good people, they have very good code, they create some patents, or they have very good user base, and you buy them without an effort, and they pay off the venture capital, and they're successful because they gain millions, and the big company like Google, Alphabet become even bigger, more powerful, if you like. So acquisitions are very interesting to look at also from the other perspective, which is that can we learn something about their business and political strategies through how they acquire other businesses? Are they buying out competition? Are they buying the software? Are they basically killing ideas? Or they want to be dominant, like when Google at the time bought Motorola. When you look at this data set, it's convoluted. And again, similar to the influence industry businesses, when you look at the contracts, if you have a chance, and usually you don't have a chance, what you learn is the kind of PR language. There's some claim that Google bought this company because they produce certain kinds of software, or this and this. But you actually never can verify it. So what we did, we hire researchers, and we work with density design, and go back to what these companies were before they were bought by Google or Amazon or Microsoft, and you name all of the five. And it was interesting to see, and we created this kind of a slider in the project that shows you what was the media reporting on what these companies were, so what kind of territories the big tech is trying to occupy, where they compete, when they collaborate, when they occupy the same space, when they go different spaces. And we learned that there was a massive discrepancy. So of course, one story here is about new way of thinking about monopolies, because you can't compete with them. On the other hand, they say they do not create competition because for the user, which monopolies are about, the laws are about that, can choose any of them and they are all for free anyway. So there's no competition for the clients, for the users, for us, people who are using technology and so on. In the project, you can go through different visualizations of this data that we have, like these Petri dishes and other things, that is looking at each individual big tech, who they were when they started, who they were claiming they were, in Microsoft case in the 70s, in Google in the 90s, and so on, etc., and who they became over the time of acquisitions. And you can also look at it in kind of more artistic, visual way. This is an object that we have created called Google and You that we've been showing in different places, that is showing few things. So at the bottom, all the data set, all the acquisitions of Alphabet or Google before, and how they change from who they were becoming, and then after 2008, when they completely went for the data business model, personal data business model, who they are right now. And how it looks like from the user perspective is this chaos of information with the benefits of the sleek mobile phone and so on. And from the Google perspective, it looks very differently, where if you look at all the services, even only the 10 biggest ones, like Maps or Gmail, and you probably have all of them on your mobile anyway, so you know what they are, each of them have over 1 billion, 2 or 3 billion of unique users. And we only have 5 billion users, or about 6 billion users of the internet. So you can claim in some way that Google has an interface, infrastructural interface, to intercept activities of majority of the people that are connected to internet right now, yesterday, and tomorrow. And the reason I'm bringing it here in the context of the influence industry is not because of the monopoly. That's the FCC problem and other problems that has to be solved. But for me, this infrastructure is enabling certain actors to do things that are unscrutinable, that we have to create this weird databases and artistic objects to be able to tell the story, that this space is completely not only unregulated, but it's impossible to understand. And for the influence industry, that is very critical, because ownership of infrastructure that influence our views on, you name it, crisis, or in the context of election about politics, in our opinion, comes with accountability and responsibility that is not possible if you deal with Houdini in the room that can claim whatever they want, however they want, and tell you that they actually don't know what's going on their platforms because they are black boxes. If you compare that with how people feel about politics and how they use technology, you come to a set of interesting conclusions. So, not far from here, 2 years ago, we did an exhibition called Everything Will Be Fine. And Everything Will Be Fine was a kind of public installation, public space where visitors could come and look at some artist work, some of our work, and explore one thing through almost 200 different interpretations. And that thing was, what is the relationship between technology and our understanding of the world? So how technology is determining, I am talking about digital technology, the apps we have, the devices we have in our pockets, how it is informing how we even understand what the crisis is, what is causing the crisis, and what are the solutions to the crisis, if you like. So we divided the exhibition into 4 narratives: to the digital panic, care, doubt, and hope, which gives you a very different kind of a perspective and a way of looking at how intimately we are connected and dependent on technology, digital technology, and that comes with these 2 things I showed you before, which is the intrinsic kind of embedded everywhere infrastructure, and this massive business model of influence industry that is trying to make money, because that's what it's all about, on controlling our political behaviors. This exhibition also kind of led us to going back to thinking about crisis, elections, influencing, and so on. Some time ago, in January, there was a report published that I would recommend you to look at, that is kind of timely, coming just before the big election year, including the European elections, that is looking at a different way that we can divide society that will be participating in elections, not by their views by political party or things like we normally look at, but rather what are the key topics that people will be deciding around who to vote for or not. And they're looking at these 5 types of crises. The technology is not here, of course, the influence industry is not here, but for us there was kind of a breaking point about thinking what we can be observing during the elections in the coming months in Europe and outside of Europe. This is the kind of the same data set, but split between countries, and you can see that different crisis plays higher or lower role in different contexts for various reasons that I'm not going to explore. In the other study that we've been looking at, that was a bit earlier, a year earlier, we are also looking at different attitudes, and there's plenty of focus at the Republica as well on young people. There's entire programs trying to work out how we can help young people to be more engaged in politics and take part in elections and so on, etc. And then when you look at this, you see that ideas that we would never consider, especially when looking at young people, that they may be preferring to vote for authoritarian types of regimes, are disturbing. That is part of another stream of thinking, which is that basically polarization, confusion, and you name it, the reason that you can't have a dinner at Christmas with your family because there's going to be some argument about politics is because we're living in the world that is creating massive profit to those who run the infrastructure and the influence industry. We've been working a lot with young people. If you want to see how we do that, you can scan this QR code and so on. This project is called Everywhere All the Time. We just launched it. But through working with 300 young people and about 100 educators in many countries of European Union, we come to the, yet again, confirmation that the technological world of information, how we learn, how we gain our knowledge, how the world works, is becoming more and more confusing, specifically because we try to do that through the mediation that I already was talking about, the digital technology, the hardware, the software, and the business models. Now, I want to show you a few things, like real examples of what I mean by what is worth exploring in the context of influence industry. So I'm not giving you any conclusions because I believe you will come up with your own conclusions anyway. So just try to put these things together, what I'm talking about, in some other way. Hopefully it's not very chaotic and my English is not horrible. So one thing was interesting for us to see, what does it mean when you control or not control? This is a report that we were also looking at that is specifically focusing on the oil and gas industry and how when Biden announced the whatever $1 trillion climate bill, how much more oil companies started to invest in advertisement, promoting their work, making them look credible and so on, etc. And when it dies in November 2020, it's not because Biden said something different. Basically, the political ads were banned on Facebook on that date, and they just went flat. So when you doubt that regulations and so on may have some effect, they do have effect, but it is kind of limited. Ted Cruz, that you may not remember who the heck that was actually a very interesting case that you should be looking at because he was one of the first at the large scale using the influence industry. And they, at the time of 2015 and 16, were bragging about what tools they're using and how they're using them and so on. Now, this industry is much more quiet, it's much harder to penetrate what exactly works, how they work, and so on, etc. But if you think about the influence industry and where they're getting the data from and so on, it's not only about privacy, personal data, and all these things that we are being told to be worried about, that we should be worried about, but it's also about a lot of stuff that you can infer for things. This is an example of company, startup in France, that is using satellite views that can determine your views based on the fact that either you're using solar panels or not, or what kind of roof you have, what kind of road, where you're living, who are your neighbors, and so on, etc. And then another example here is that even if you're a loser, you are still a winner. You get photographed, you go to prison, and you make $7 million on selling T-shirts with your pictures. That is kind of a highlight of the fact that this entire industry is profit-driven. There's no conspiracy there, if you were thinking of. There's no cartel, there's no anything else. It's just big money and everything works, especially if you can do something that would make look standard, classical, old school media bad. And then I have a few questions I want to ask you, and I don't know if you will share them with me. I have 4 minutes left, so let's see how that's going to go. We look at a lot of different narratives when we look at the influence industry, the politics and technology and so on, etc. And you can see that the tech companies are extremely optimistic and forward-looking and futuristic and kind of utopian and so on, the way they even think they're going to fly to Mars and live there. While the culture, if you read the books and if you see the television, Black Mirror is one of the examples, is kind of dystopian. But my reflection, looking at how this polarization, confusion is leading, kind of lowering the way we even communicate with each other, is more about infantilizing politics and the democratic processes than anything else. We're just arguing and shouting and throwing toys at each other more and more. So maybe one of these impacts of technology is like, instead of being immortal, we will be babies, unable to form sentences to each other and fighting for the place in the sandpit. The other observation is there's a lot of focus on synthetic media, and I think it's very important because synthetic media creates this environment that not only you have to come up with an entire toolkit of how to discover what is synthetic and debunk it, but also everything that is non-synthetic, because synthetic looks so good, looks like synthetic, so you can always say that something that is truthfully documented is also false because it looks like synthetic. It kind of creates this vicious circle loop. But I think it's important to look at what it is creating, which is the synthetic trust. That is a trust that basically doesn't exist, that is about patterns and a promise that, especially AI is not about knowledge. AI is about patterns. It looks like knowledge because it's synthetically done so well that it's impressing our senses. But in reality, it's just patterns, nothing else. And we need tools for going back to knowledge-based society, not pattern-based society, and so on. And then there's also another way of looking at it. It is not only about misinformation, disinformation, fake or not, and so on, etc., but it's about all of these intricate, specific ways of using AI that makes things much cheaper, much faster, and much easier to produce. And it's not only about the visual, the text, the voice, and so on, but it's about code, it's about strategies, it's about tools, and it's about new ways of targeting that, we call them hyper, super. I couldn't come up with any words, so I use the word quadraphonic, which is kind of nonsense by the end of the day. And in my last 2 minutes, I want to tell you what we try to do about it. So we believe that there's a space and a need for a very different kind of way of talking about influence industry, the role of technology, the big actors, and how we even talk about. And we want to create influence situation rooms. A very basic concept inspired by some basic ideas, but imagine a house that has a front and a back, and the front is an exhibition and tells you all of this stuff I told you, but in a much better, much more interesting way that is actually engaging and tangible and so on. And in the back of the room, you have investigators that come from the OSINT community, artists and so on, etc., that are able to look live on what is happening during the election or events like COP24. And the inspirations here are coming from cybersyn, not because of the cybersyn, because cybersyn never worked. They used telexes. What we like about it is the fact that all of this information is fake. It's basically printed by students, actually, that were taught by the German professor on how to visualize information. But it has this idea that we need, because we're humans, interfaces that tell us stories about what's going on that otherwise we don't have the way of scrutinizing. We want to work with artists that represent things in interesting, provocative ways. And in the back room, we want to have people in the lab coats that would be doing what police never does, but it's in every single television show on the police, that they have this big wall with a lot of pictures and dots and lines, and they make connections, etc. Police doesn't do that. It's just made out specifically for television. But we want to replicate that fake stuff. 1 minute left, or I'm gone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this applause is for you, Marek Tuszynski. Thank you very much for this thrilling insights of your work. Now we have not quite 15 minutes for a short break. So you are welcome to get some refreshments, fresh air, relaxation, and we will be back on stage 9 at 5:30.